Hi, my name is Tarpistandi, and I'm the only developer of the small indie game studio PandemicSim Programs. And this is the first video of a series in which I'll talk about my current projects and their development. So, given this, let me introduce you to Transmission Board. Have you ever played Plague? If you haven't, briefly, Plague is a 2D real-time strategy game where you can either play as a disease or as the cure in a pandemic situation. Now, given that all of you have been through 2020, you would think you have a pretty good grasp on the concept of pandemics. However, just to make sure you're all on the same line, a pandemic is a disease spreading worldwide scenario. And that's where or what at Plaguing is set. And even though Plaguing is great at showing how pandemics work, it doesn't really have to make you really understand how diseases work and spread from person to person. For that, you will need a game about epidemics. But I haven't really found any like complicated and scientifically accurate. And that's pretty unfortunate. Unless I could turn it into a game idea. And that's what I did. Now, first of all, for any project, you need to choose a game engine. And I couldn't just go with the easy mode and go with Scratch. I decided to use something that was actually professional. And so I went with Unity. It's professional, it's overall simple, and there's like ton documented, just tons of it. Anyways, I opened up Unity after installing it and I tried to learn it. And after 2 to 3 weeks, I was pretty good at all the random stuff I was trying to do to entertain myself. And so I decided I was ready to make the actual game. Spoiler alert, I I was wrong and very much so. So, as for any game, I needed two things, a map and the characters. As a map, I just made a very simple white rectangle background and some gray walls. One upper wall, one lower wall, right and left, and I mean, you get it. For the characters, on the other hand, I decided to go with dots. They're pretty simple and they're pretty good at representing the like disease spreading range. And it was minimalistic, and I wanted my game to be minimalistic, not pixelated, but minimalistic. So I made some circles, a green circle because green represents being healthy, and I made the red one, which will represent being sick. However, they do nothing because, surprise, I didn't code them. Code is literally just telling a computer what to do, and computers follow your exact instructions. Well, that's good, but that's also bad because if you don't give them the proper instructions or like not well written instructions which can be confused, then they will also get confused and do stuff bad. So I had to make a way for people to move, and I just made the most inefficient way to do that. I made a rigid body to the people and to the walls. You'll understand why to the walls in a second. And I just made them go sliding to the right. However, there were two problems. First of all, I didn't want the people to just slide to the right forever. And so I used trigonometry, like cosine and sine waves, to calculate the directional speed on each axis from a randomly generated angle. I used that and I fixed that problem. However, there was the second problem as well. People just keep going and they would just glitch out of the wall, like quite literally, and they would end up in the backrooms or something. And I had to avoid that. In Scratch, you could just put a block, which does literally just that. But in Unity, there was no such thing, so I had to come up with a way to do that. And I found it. Imagine person moving at speed 1 up on the y-axis, so +1. What you need to measure? Just, we don't care, just 1. When they go up and touch the upper wall, I want them to go down. And then the movement on the y-axis is -1. And then when they touch the lower part, again, +1. So I had to find a way to transform from positive to negatives and to negatives from positive. And luckily, math helped me because I could just multiply by -1. When it touches the upper and lower walls, it multiplies the y-axis movement by -1. When they do that with the right or left, same thing but for the x-axis. And so I managed to do it, unless I didn't. Apparently, I made more than one rigid body, and I spent multiple hours trying to understand that. So that's the beauty of programming. It can show you just how good yet how bad you are stuff. After finally managing to make a moving system, I had to make also a disease system because the whole game is around that concept. So I decided to go this way. Each person has a tag which indicates its status. It can be either susceptible, infected, differently alive, or recovered. And so I did that. I made a system which will check the status and therefore change the sprite. For example, red infected, green susceptible, and cyan recovered. Then I also made a system where there will be the disease behavior. And it works this way. When a person is first exposed to the pathogen, it doesn't just get sick instantly. It rather has an incubation period, the period from the exposure and the presentation of symptoms. So I made it wait a random amount of time, depending from two variables, like minimum and maximum, which was pretty simple, just using numerate, wait, I enumerators, how are they pronounced? Anyway, then I also made it change after the incubation period to the sickness period. Basically, when you can infect others and you present symptoms. And I made it so that if an infected person touches a susceptible person, the susceptible person has a chance of going into incubation and then in infection, and so on, so on. So it's a cycle, basically. Then, after a while, again, random amount of days, not real time days, in-game days, which are about like 2.5 seconds or so. Anyway, then it has three possibilities. One, become back to susceptible. Two, go to recovering, where you are now immune against the disease. Or three, your immune system fails to keep your body alive. And well, that's a thing we want to avoid. And I also made two new features, which are social distancing and isolation. Social distancing makes people stop moving, staying in place to like decrease the chances they got to be infected or to infect others. And then isolation, which makes people who are aware that they're sick stop moving and also like stay at home to avoid infecting others. However, you may have heard that I said if they are aware of being sick. What do I mean by that? Well, it's simple. Well, it's actually never simple, but briefly, you can be asymptomatic. You should have heard that word by now because of the pandemic which happened in 2020. But if you haven't, basically, it's when you're sick and you can infect others, but you don't have the symptoms. The reason I decided to include this is not because it's that common. It's somewhat rare and it's also pretty complicated to simulate. However, I decided to add it as in a simplified way because I thought things will get like more mysterious given that you can't know everything about anything really. Thanks for following me through this first part because there's still a lot of stuff I haven't talked about and I still skipped a lot of stuff because programming isn't easy. It's challenging and that's what makes it awesome. Hope this video was not too boring and if you're interested in trying out the game, you can through the itch.io link. See ya in the next video.